On a cold, rainy night in Portland, Daniel stopped by the same small Korean restaurant he always visited after work. The place was nearly empty, chairs already stacked, lights dimmed low for closing. While waiting for his takeout order, he noticed the owner's wife quietly preparing something for an elderly man resting near the back counter. A small heating pack, a cup of steaming tea. Slow movements, like this little routine, had been repeated for years. Daniel watched for a few seconds before finally asking, "Is he sick?" The owner smiled softly. "No, a lot of Asian families just have small nighttime habits." Daniel nodded politely. At the time, he had no idea that only a few days later, a small nighttime habit he almost ignored would slowly change the way his body felt every single morning. Daniel Parker was 48 years old, the kind of man who never really complained. Even when he was tired, he usually kept it to himself. For most of his life, Daniel assumed his body would always recover the way it used to, a little slower in the mornings, a little heavier after meals, a little harder to fully relax at night. Nothing dramatic, just different. But over the last few months, something had started bothering him in a way he couldn't quite explain. His worst mornings almost always came after nights when his stomach never felt fully comfortable. Not pain, not illness, nothing serious, just pressure, heaviness. That strange feeling that his body never fully settled down before his sleep. And the next morning, it felt like his body still hadn't completely recovered from the night before. His shoulders heavier, his movements slower, his stomach still carrying this dull, uncomfortable weight deep inside. What bothered Daniel the most was remembering that his body never used to feel this way. There was a time when he could eat anything late at night, drink ice water at midnight, fall asleep on the couch, and somehow wake up the next morning feeling completely normal, as if his body had never known fatigue. But lately, his body no longer seemed to bounce back the way it once did. Daniel lived alone in a quiet apartment in Portland. Most evenings followed the same routine. Come home, turn on the kitchen light, listen to rain tapping softly against the windows. Sometimes he cooked quick noodles. Sometimes he brought home simple takeout after work. The food might be warm, but beside Daniel, there was almost always a large glass of ice water. Daniel never thought much about it until his body slowly started reacting differently at night. Some evenings he would lie down in bed, but his stomach still felt strangely full and tense, like his body was still trying to deal with dinner hours later. Some nights he even woke up earlier than usual because the heaviness never fully went away. It wasn't exactly insomnia. He just wasn't sleeping deeply anymore. Then, one night near dawn, Daniel suddenly woke up at 4 a.m. The apartment was so dark and quiet, he could hear the rain outside the window. He sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. No pain, no sickness, just heaviness in his stomach, and the strange feeling that his body couldn't fully relax. Daniel leaned forward, resting his hands on his knees as he slowly exhaled. In that exact moment, the memory of the Korean restaurant came back to him. The old man, the tea, the heating pack resting quietly on his stomach. The next morning, Daniel stood silently in front of his coffee machine. Outside, Portland was still rainy and gray, like always. His eyes drifted toward the half-empty glass of ice water left on the kitchen counter from the night before. And suddenly, he remembered the old man again. The calmness in the restaurant, the warmth, the slow, quiet rhythm of how they ended the night. Daniel stood there for a few seconds. Then, for the first time in years, He quietly asked himself, maybe I should try slowing down like that too. That evening, Daniel came home later than usual. Rain continued sliding softly down the apartment windows. He placed his takeout bag on the kitchen counter, opened the refrigerator, and instinctively reached for the cold water bottle. But then he stopped. The memory of the Korean restaurant came back again. The owner had casually mentioned something the night before. My father always said cold drinks made his stomach feel heavy at night. Then he laughed softly. So before bed, he always drank something warm instead. Nothing about the conversation sounded mystical or like health advice. It simply sounded gentle, human. Before Daniel left the restaurant that night, the owner had smiled and said, "If you ever feel like trying it, maybe your body would like it too." Daniel stood there quietly in front of the open refrigerator. Then, for the first time in many years, he closed the door without taking the cold water out. Instead, he filled a small kettle. The apartment slowly filled with the soft sound of boiling water. Daniel found a few slices of leftover ginger in the kitchen drawer, some honey, an old peppermint tea bag hidden in the back of the cabinet. Everything felt simple, almost awkward, like his body had gone years without being cared for gently. He carried the hot tea to the couch beside the window. Outside, Portland remained wrapped in rain and blue-gray streetlights. Daniel took a slow sip. Warmth gradually spread downward through his chest and stomach. Nothing magical happened. No instant relief. No miracle feeling. But for the first time in months, his stomach no longer felt cold and tight at the end of the night. And strangely, the apartment itself felt quieter when he slowed down like this. Before bed, Daniel suddenly remembered an old heating pack buried deep inside his closet. He had bought it years ago after straining his shoulder, but barely used it afterward. He filled it with warm water slowly beneath the dim yellow bathroom light. At first, the whole thing felt a little ridiculous. A nearly 50-year-old man, sitting alone in a quiet apartment during a rainstorm, holding a heating pack against his stomach before bed. But after a few minutes, Daniel finally understood why the old man at the restaurant did it every night. The warmth made his body feel safe somehow, quiet, unclenched, like his stomach was finally letting go of the tension it had carried all day. The next morning, Daniel woke up early like usual. Portland was still rainy. The coffee machine still made the same familiar sounds. But when he leaned over the bathroom sink to wash his face, Daniel suddenly noticed something small. He didn't instinctively tense his stomach anymore. The heaviness wasn't completely gone, just softer, lighter. And for the first time in months, Daniel didn't wake up feeling like his body was still carrying yesterday's exhaustion. He stood silently in front of the mirror for several seconds. Then he realized something else. Bending down to put on his shoes felt easier that morning. His shoulders weren't as tight, and his stomach no longer felt cold deep inside. The tea, the warmth, the heating pack resting gently against his stomach the night before. His body remembered all of it. The following night, Daniel repeated the same small routine. No ice water, no cold drinks, just warm tea with ginger and honey. Then the heating pack resting softly on his stomach while rain rolled against the windows outside. Everything remained incredibly simple, but his body slowly started responding differently. 2 days later, Daniel returned to the Korean restaurant. Rain still drifted quietly through Portland. The restaurant was nearly closed again. A small radio behind the counter played old music softly in the background. Daniel looked down at the steaming tea on the counter and smiled. "I tried what you said." The owner looked up. "And?" Daniel paused for a moment. "My stomach feels better, and I think I'm finally sleeping deeper again." The owner's wife smiled quietly behind the counter. In a lot of Asian homes, people believe warmth around the stomach helps the body settle at night. She placed a few more slices of ginger into his hot tea and continued, "Cold things in the evening can make your stomach uncomfortable long after you eat, but warm tea and gentle heat, they help the body settle down gently before sleep." Daniel sat quietly, listening to the rain outside the window, and for the first time in a very long time, he realized his body may have been asking for gentleness all along. The days after that, Daniel didn't change his life drastically. He still went to work, he still came home late, he still lived in that quiet apartment amidst the endless Portland rain. But before bed, he began giving his body just a few extra minutes. A cup of warm tea, fewer cold drinks, a heating pack placed gently on his stomach, and an evening that ended a bit slower than before. The strange thing was, Daniel slowly began looking forward to those evenings, not because they were exciting, but because his body seemed to quietly look forward to that feeling every single night. For the first time in years, his nights no longer felt rushed. Sometimes he sat silently on the couch holding hot tea while rain rolled down the glass outside. No television, no scrolling, no noise, just warmth. And little by little, his mornings stopped feeling so heavy. Some mornings, Daniel would wake up and stay still for a few extra seconds, simply noticing how his body felt. Warmer, lighter, more rested, like his body had finally stopped fighting itself at night. One weekend evening, Daniel stood beside the apartment window with a warm mug in his hands. He watched the thin steam gently rising from his tea. Outside, Portland rain drifted slowly across the streets, cold and damp as always. But for the first time in a very long while, his body felt calm, not because of medicine, not because of some miracle cure, just a few small changes before bed. Small things he never realized his body had quietly been asking for. If this story felt familiar, you're probably not the only one feeling this way. Sometimes the body doesn't need more pressure. Sometimes it just needs a little warmth before the day ends. Outside, the Portland rain continued falling softly through the night. But inside the small apartment, for the first time in a very long while, Daniel's body no longer felt like it was fighting the night. Welcome to Eastern Body Wisdom.